Okay, tape's rolling.
We do the pledge first, and then that. So.
All rise for the pledge.
All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tina's going to do the invitation. If you want to stand for that first. Thank you.
Lord Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight with open minds, open hearts, and open arms. We ask that you bless all the people that are here this evening so that it is your will that we do in this time. Make sure that you protect us from any viruses that may be passed around. Keep us in your hearts, keep your arms wrapped around us, and may we always look to you. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the roll call, you can see obviously we're set up a little bit different than we normally are because of the social distancing, and so anytime a board member or somebody from the public needs to address the board here, we're going to ask you to go up to the mic because there's not mics spread around. So whatever item it is, if you want to speak to it, I'll ask you to go up to mic so we can get it recorded. Okay, would you please call the roll, Dan?
Koth? Bjerke?
Here.
Driscoll? Jovic? Here. Williams? Here. Mack? Here. Bialata? Not here. Harris?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. The board cannot take any official action on any items not on the agenda. Is there any changes that we need to make on the agenda?
Okay. I would like to suggest a change. If Cheryl Chapman gets here to represent Banner, I would like to have her move up in the agenda.
Be number 10 instead of 11?
Yeah.
Switch 10
Yes,
and 11 around?
yeah, to just switch 10 and 11. That way she doesn't need to stay longer at the meeting. Are there any objections to that?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you want it to go before Ken Steichen?
Well, is he here?
Yeah, he's here.
No, I mean, she could go after Ken.
Okay, because he ties into 10, that's why I was suggesting that.
Oh,
Okay. I talked to her this afternoon, and she was going to get here around 6:15. So I don't know. She was okay with where she was on the list.
okay, we can leave it where it's at then.
Well, we can make a motion that if she gets here early, she should, be given an opportunity if you want to let her know early.
Okay.
Okay, we can address it when she comes.
Any other changes to the agenda? If not, come on in. Not all in favor of approving the agenda as listed, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 5, approval of minutes from the March 10th meeting. Did everybody have a chance? There's a motion to approve by Driscoll. Is there a second? Seconded by Nathan. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I noticed that today, Matthew Nas got back to us about, when we were talking about a change in conflict of interest, and we didn't specify when we'd like to have him give his approval or his assessment of the words we changed.
minutes.
And I'd just like to make sure that we
Switch over.
say something about that.
The minutes,
when we
I
get to
don't.
this part of the meeting. It will probably come up under director comments.
Under your items, or, okay, that's fine.
Driscoll.
Very good. Is there a motion to, there is a motion to approve the minutes?
Still a motion.
And was there a second? Nathan, okay. Okay, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 6, conflict of interest. Are there any items on the agenda this evening that any of the directors would have a conflict of interest in? Please raise your hand. Nathan?
I have a possible appearance of a conflict with item 11.
Okay. Item 11, Nathan. Anybody else? Very good. Item number 7. Take action on the director vacancy in area number 5. And this evening, Wendy Nautigal, is that how you pronounce your last name? Is here. If you could come to the podium and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. I just met you for the first time this evening, so thanks for putting in a petition for this position. And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I would be glad to. I'm going to take one of these. So, well, thanks for having me tonight. I'm very glad I did my hair, and I put a little bit of makeup on tonight. So my husband and I'm married to Bruce Noctegal, works for Game and Fish. We have a 13-year-old daughter. My work background, so for the past 11 years, I've been in a compliance arena. I worked for Ditech. It would have been 21 years this month. In October, I was actually offered a position with a different company that, Ditech got dismantled, and so I was offered another type of compliance manager position with another company based out of Houston. Excuse me. And so that's where I've been. I am strictly a work-from-home employee, and I have a team of 6 people that I work with, and that's what we do. We are internal auditors. A little bit of personal stuff. We are all about the outdoors. We love to hike and fish and boat. We love to camp. And yeah, so that's about me in a nutshell.
Okay, is there anybody from the board who would like to ask a question?
I'm just curious about your educational background. Are you CPA or CPA track?
I'm not. No, I do not have that kind of background. I've been in the finance world for over 25 years. I've done everything from a refinance environment to selling mobile homes to keep them from being in a repossession. I was a bankruptcy manager. I worked within the foreclosure realm. So largely my experience comes from learning as I go. I do have a community college background from 30 plus years ago. You bet. Thank you.
Okay, anybody have a question for Wendy? Okay, well, thank you, and we'll,
Thank
I
you.
guess the next thing we need to do is there a motion to have her fill the vacancy? Tom?
I move that Wendy fills the vacancy for Area 5 since, according to Dan, that she has met all the minimum requirements to become a director of the West Dakota Water Development District.
Is there a second? Seconded by Nathan. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Congratulations. We're going to take a short break here because the next thing we need to do is have Tina's here. She's going to swear you in. So we'll just take a short break here while she does her work.
Okay.
I'm Tina Mullally, notary, in order to swear in the oath of office to the West Dakota Water Development District, the newly elected or appointed. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
Wendy Noctegal.
Of District Area 5, please repeat after me.
Okay. Of District Area 5,
Having been elected as a member
having been elected as a member
of the Board of Directors
of the Board of Directors
of the West Dakota Water Development District,
of the West Dakota Water Development District,
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the laws and Constitution of the United States
that I will support the laws and the Constitution of the United States
and the state of South Dakota.
and the state of South Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
and to the best of my ability,
and to the best of my ability,
perform all the duties of my said office
perform all the duties of my said office
of the Board of Directors of the West Dakota Water Development District,
of the Board of Directors of the West Dakota Water Development District,
Director Area 5,
Director Area 5,
and render a true account of all money,
and render a true account of all money,
credits, accounts, and property of any kind
credits, accounts, and property of any kind
that shall come into my hands as such officer,
that shall come into my hands as such officer,
and pay over and deliver
and pay over and deliver
the same according to law.
the same according to law.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
want to sign this for me?
Sure.
Does she need to sign anything, or? Okay. Well, let's give her a little hand. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard. Hi, Cheryl. You want?
One more chair for Cheryl?
There's one right here.
Is Tina sitting there?
No, she's back.
She's in the back.
There's one right up in front here, Cheryl. Thanks for coming. Okay, thank you very much.
If you could possibly make sure I get a copy of this for my records as well, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, you need anything, Dan, or we ready to go?
No, everything's good.
Okay,
This will all go in a file, all the petitions, and of course, they've been verified,
okay,
so.
very good. Okay, item number 8 is the treasurer's report, so, Dan?
Yes, we currently have about $527,000 in our bank accounts. And we've spent on appropriations to date almost $18,000. We're actually a little behind, or we're lower than we had budgeted, which is usually what happens. And we haven't really had any projects going on at this point. So I know this is hard to read, but it's in your packet, and my mouse is kind of flaky, but to date, for unpaid project obligations, we have $38,600 obligated. And I will bring up another, I tried to make this a little more concise because you'll probably want to have an idea of where we're at because we're voting on 2 projects. The total would be about $50,000. Plus, we have a budget meeting coming up. So I just did some rough calculation estimates here. When we started 2020, we had $528,000. Our levy income for this year will be $211,000. We budgeted $90,000 for appropriations, which basically means just everything but the project. So that's paying me, paying you guys, paying the rent, paying the insurance, all that stuff. Last year, we actually were closer to $78,000, so these are probably conservative numbers. We have a contract for the stream gauge for $15,600. Canyon Lake sampling due to the dredging is $18,000, and a septic grant. So if we subtract those off, our estimated funds in January 2021 would be about $610,000. That's what we would have in the bank. And just to give you an idea, if you approve those two projects today, that will bring that down to $560,000. So the other reason I was bringing this up now is so you can have this in your head when we decide what to do with our money, because there's an item on the agenda for putting some of this into a CD. That's all I have.
Okay, very good. Any questions on the treasurer's report? Nathan?
So, we're still carrying this on-site wastewater treatment grant, septic tank, replacement. I was trying to remember, where we were on that. They were gonna be coming back here, right?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Yeah,
Okay, I talked to Holly. Originally, she was supposed to come back, and then the corona thing hit, and we weren't even sure what was going on. So I called her up, and after talking to the chairman, and we decided to delay her coming. She did give me an update, and she hasn't done the work yet. There are a lot of problems she's been having, and I told her, well, we need to, the directors might be wanting you to show some progress here eventually, so that's where we're at. That's Holly Telford is her name.
I would suggest that we see if she could come to our July meeting then.
Yeah, I told her that at least in July.
'Cause,
'Cause like I said, we weren't even sure we were going to have this meeting, and
yeah. Yeah, if you could do that, just get it on the agenda for the July meeting then. It's been going on a long time.
We've had this open for, what, a year or more now?
More than a year, I would say, isn't it?
I'd have to look.
Seems like it.
It's probably been about a year, a little over a year, I think.
To date? Nothing has been done to date?
No.
Is there any reason for us to believe that anything ever will be done?
Well, I shouldn't say nothing's been done. According to Holly, who, by the way, is doing this on behalf of her disabled sister, she did purchase the septic tank, and I believe that's sitting over at Grover, the contractor that is supposed to be doing the work, but he's hedging on it for whatever reasons, the price. But I'm just going by what she told me.
I think it's appropriate to have her come back here in July and.
I'll tell her she has to come back here, and I'll tell her that it's probably good to show some progress.
Yes,
There's some light at the end of the tunnel here.
yeah, that's been on the books for quite a while. Any other questions on the treasurer's report? Is there a motion to approve? Tom,
Move to approve the treasurer's report as reported.
is there a second? Seconded by Bob. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, that's number 9. Presentation from Ken Steichen. Update on the Trinity Eco Park, Prayer Park. Thanks for coming, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thanks, great to be here. Good to see some familiar faces. Well, I have a correction. My last name is Stein Ken.
Stein, Ken.
There's an N there. Ken, Stein, Ken. It's like a mirror.
Oh, is it spelled wrong?
What's that?
Missing.
Yeah, there's an N missing.
Oh,
I should have brought my director's.
so it's a spelling. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. For those of you that are new, I used to be a director here. Anyway, it's good to see some familiar faces. Glad you guys are carrying on with the work of water development here. That's fantastic. New location.
Yeah.
It's working out good.
It's working out good.
Yeah, that's good. So anyway, I'm the director of the Trinity Eco Prayer Park. The West Dakota Water Development District, prior to my being on that as a director, entertained an invitation to look at the Trinity Eco Prayer Park as a project to support, and offered a grant of $25,000 for the Trinity Eco Prayer Park. And it was mainly directed towards the development of a drain field that I'll show you here in a little bit. That was out of about a $500,000 project. So it was one of the major gifts to the project, but percentage-wise, it wasn't a huge part of the project, but significant nonetheless. So Dan and Dan have been after me to come back and give a report here, and I'm more than glad to do that because I see it's listed here on your nice poster that you have as one of the projects that we've done. And that's really nice to have all that there to see. I was kind of looking over that and reflecting on some of the things that happened while I was involved, and then things that happened before and things that happened since. It's exciting to see that. Is that on the website? That list?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. So anyway, let's get after it. I'll try to be concise, but I get excited about this, so you might have to rein me in or something. Yeah.
I got a gavel here.
Yeah, okay, you know what to do. All right, so this is at the corner of 4th and St. Joe in Rapid City, downtown. And in 2005, the Trinity Lutheran Church Endowment Foundation, which is connected to Trinity Lutheran Church, purchased this property. It was vacant. There was plans to develop it into a 10-story building. Those plans fell through. And for those of you that have been around here a long time, that was formerly the site of the Tip Top Motor Hotel. Not motel, Motor Hotel. And the developer tore it down and left it like this for quite some time. The foundation purchased it with no direct idea of what to do with it. They just figured it was adjacent property, so it would be smart to have it. This is how it looked in 2010, 5 years later. And it was being treated heavily with herbicides. That's why it looks like that. That's one of the reasons I got involved in this project. I'm like, stop pouring chemicals all over that yard there, that land. All right, go ahead there, Dan. So anyway, here's the vision that we had to develop this park. To create a place to reflect on how we relate to God, one another, and the planet, kind of a threefold relationship thing, kind of a triangle, all those things connecting together. And then also to explore ways to work with nature instead of against it. Try to understand natural systems and try to go with them instead of fight against them. Because I used to be a high school teacher, taught freshman English, and even freshman English students, when you ask them teaching literature, man versus nature, who wins? Nature every time. Okay, so it's just a good idea to try to work with nature. Good, Dan. So anyway, this is what it looked like a little bit after the fact. You can see that some of the growth is starting to come back when we stop treating it. Several different benefits to transform the downtown lot into a beautiful vista, to enhance the appearance and vitality of downtown, and also to move development east of 5th Street. That was kind of one of the motivations. Sustainability benefits, to work in harmony with the natural environment, avoid depleting other or damaging other ecosystems, conserve energy and resources like soil, water, nutrients, and fuel. And also a big part of what we want to do was to be a model for personal, business, and public projects, to see things that we were doing that others would possibly consider doing. And then spiritual benefits. And we list stewardship of the planet, the idea of it being a model and a practical experience, as being a spiritual benefit, because for us that's all related. You know, it's how you care for the planet is how you show your relationship with God. And then just a place to sit, stroll, and meditate or pray. So anyway, this vacant piece of property was there. We're making plans for a park, thinking about it. We've been talking about putting an irrigation system in. But in this corner here, this southwest corner that faces like where Hardee's is and the church parking lot, we had, stormwater runoff that was coming into that corner and just cutting in there really deep. And well, we had a guy that we have a concrete contractor in our congregation, and he's like, well, I can put in a curb, and we can divert that so it just goes around and not stops being such a nuisance. But I was doing some research for a writing project I was working on, and I met this gentleman, Gerald Wilhelm. He is involved in a firm, engineering firm outside of Chicago. He believes in zero runoff. Everything should have zero runoff in his mind. And he told me this when I met with him. He said, when rain falls, two things can happen. It can infiltrate the soil and become a blessing to local life, or it can run off and leave where it fell bereft of its benefit and become a liability to life and property downstream. So standing there at that corner thinking about irrigating that property, and then hearing what this guy said, all of a sudden it went like, well, we got all this water running into the park, and then we're going to put in a sprinkler system? That's not very smart. So go ahead. So what we did go ahead and put some curbing in, but you'll notice the way we designed it. We, instead of having the curb run along the alley there, we put an inlet so the water would go into the park and capture it. And then on the right-hand side there, that's a curb that we have along the Hardee's side, and you'll notice that there's breaks in the curb so that the water runs into the park instead of running out into the alley and going elsewhere. But this just shows it in action there. When it rains, water comes in, all that impervious surface, water probably from about half to two-thirds of that entire block ends up coming into that piece of property. I know you can see the results of it quite a bit coming in. Go ahead. So West Dakota Water Development District provided funding to create an underground drain field to increase storage capacity. That was the main thing that I targeted for this project, to kind of break it down so it would be significant. And what that allowed us to do, there's drain tiles that run underneath the main lawn area. The water is able to infiltrate in and then move to other parts of the park so that it can hold more water. There's three main areas that the park seeks to show examples, and then it's the stormwater collection, solar electricity generation, and then also native plantscaping. Go ahead. One of the things we did was this sidewalk along St. Joseph Street was damaged and needed to be replaced, and it wasn't part of our plans, but it's like a 14-foot wide sidewalk, and we're like, well, let's not put in 14-foot wide sidewalk. The city says we need 6. So we put in 6, and we ended up adding another whole set of planter systems along St. Joe Street there that was impervious and catches water coming off the sidewalk and creates another green space there between the sidewalk and the street. I mentioned we also work with native plants. This is just a short list. These are species that we got from the Natural Resource Conservation Service that they donated. We have a species list of 100 plants and trees, and we try to work with plants that are just in western South Dakota naturally. They're divided into 4 different biomes in the park. There's the shortgrass prairie, the midgrass prairie, the Black Hills, and the wetlands area. And so the plantings are arranged accordingly. Go ahead. One of the exciting things, the species that we did, the NRCS located a rancher in Lower Spring Creek, Del Peterson, and he had a bunch of buffalo grass growing just in his pasture, and he invited us to come out and cut sod there. So we'll see a couple examples. Go ahead, Dan. Kind of in the spring we scouted, because that's when the buffalo grass greens up late, so you get out there and you can kind of see where it is. And then now, if you notice, we got to put flags out there so we could come back later and harvest it. Go ahead. And there's a member of the church, Chris Beckett. You know, a sod cutter is horrible to work with to begin with, but you take it out on a prairie, I mean, it was a wretched job. But he did it there. That's fine. Go ahead, Dan. You can see we cut that up and then laid it out on a trailer. Good. And then brought it in town and laid it. And the thing I want you to really notice here is that on the lower right-hand side, that's the soil that we planted it on. We used as much of the fill that was on that property, you know, and fill, you know what that is. That's the garbage that everybody else doesn't want. They haul it someplace else. But we did a mixture of it with some rocks and mulch from the city. But that is, you know, what we planted that prairie sod on. And the prairie sod is like, oh yeah, this is nice, because it recognizes land like that. That's what it expects. Go ahead. And then that's kind of the way it looked after it got laid out there. We ran a little bit short of it, but buffalo grass, you know, it creeps. So there are some bare spaces, and it's kind of cool now, like about 4 or 5 years later, you can go walk along the areas where I know that there wasn't buffalo grass, and it's grown into that area, just spreads. Go ahead. Native species, we planted some from seed. They conserve water. You don't have to water them. We did have a drip irrigation system in some of these areas here, and actually just in the last month, we took out all the drip irrigation because we hadn't used it in 4 years since things got established. All the species on the outer exterior part of the park are not watered. They just grow. And these are species that weren't planted, but they're volunteers. They just came up because they're western South Dakota species. So when we're able to identify ones that are appropriate, we just let them go. They weren't invited to the party, but we let them stay anyway. All right, so going to talk about a few different things here related to the park, education and research, because I think it's important to understand the scope of the park. Once again, there's our mission, our vision. Go ahead, Dan. The park in the heart of Rapid City models thoughtful environmental stewardship. We have hosted on-site tours for professionals and students. Go ahead. We've been a tour site for the Western South Dakota Hydrology Conference, the Architects in America Regional Conference, the City of Rapid City Sustainability Conference, and the South Dakota Research Education for Teachers program. So these people have come to the park to observe the different types of things that are going on there. And then we have a sustainability outreach where we take the message to live lightly on the planet to civic groups, school classrooms, and public gatherings.
Did I go? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We welcome research. We're excited about having groups, projects, individuals that investigate the health of ecosystems and natural resources. So it's a site that's designed, that was part of the vision at the beginning, for people to come and understand those environmental relationships.
Did I jump to?
No, that's right.
Things are slow here for some reason.
So am I. These are some of the studies that have been completed at the park. Data is collected for USGS. It was a 3-year program, I think, wasn't it, that Galen did? Oh, yeah, 2016 to 2018. South Dakota School of Mines engineered rain garden stormwater report. And then the one in the lower left-hand was done by an undergrad at the School of Mines. She studied pollinators, and she was checking the biodiversity at different green infrastructure sites. And Jason is actually working on developing that further, right, Jason? So we like research to go on there. It's a nice concentrated area where they can observe things. Go ahead. All right. How's it working? Let's see what you got for your bang for your buck here, if it's working or not. So let's go on. All right. Like I said, there's kind of 3 areas that we talk about: solar energy, stormwater collection, and native species. We have off-grid lights. They have solar collectors. They generate electricity, store it in their batteries, and then they work at night to light the park. We have on the back of the shelter there a two-way solar collector that's linked to the grid, and it's not huge. It's more of a demonstration, but you will notice there that the meter has the arrow pointing this way, and that means the energy we're polluting the grid with green energy. We're putting green energy into the grid is what I meant to say. Yeah. Go ahead. And then here's the results. Our highest electric bill in 2015 was $21 with a $12.50 customer charge. Our lowest bill was $15.60 with a $12 charge. So in essence, we're paying $5 to $6 a month for the electricity that we use in the park. And all the light fixtures in the park are LEDs. That helps there. The shelter, obviously, there that we don't. That's what we use the electricity for. That's the main thing at night. But those are LED lights on motion-activated sensors, so that the lights just come on when somebody's there, and then if there's no movement, then they shut off. Stormwater. This figure here, the 3,700 or 3,800 cubic feet, is a figure that the School of Mines research team came up with. I noticed in the minutes it says the capacity was supposed to be 18,000 cubic feet. That's what the engineer told us in the beginning. So this was the best figure that I've had where someone's actually sit down and looked at it to see what the actual performance was. But you can see that a lot of water comes in there. This is interesting. I don't know if you can see the drawing there on the top is an overhead view, and there's like horizontal lines going across. That's the drain field that runs underneath the lawn. And then you can see there's a dotted line that goes like toward the south. There's a collector area, and then there's a diagonal line that goes off. Well, that drain field goes into the pond. There's also an actual drain in the lawn that connects into that. And then on the right, it's not really easy to see, but when lots of water gets in there, it's like an artesian spring in the pond. That's water bubbling up that's coming from the lawn through the underground drain system. So it makes me really excited when I get to see that. I don't like it because that means there's lots of water. And then after it gets into the pond, when it gets to a certain level, there's an overflow outlet for quick recovery for this to happen. So I'm going to show you, this is the most exciting feature of the park. And West Dakota Water Development District is a key player because they helped develop this drain field. So let's take a look here. Dan, go ahead to the next one. All right, this is June 20th, 2018 at 3 p.m. Huge gully washer. Do you remember how much that rainfall was? That storm?
It was close to 2 inches. It was like an inch, and it was over an inch and a half.
Right, in like an hour or something? Yeah. And I see that we've got a duplicate picture here. There's Jason. He's kayaking in the park. But you can see that main central lawn area is a depression, and it's on purpose. The landscape architect, Eric Heikus, who designed this, said that this is a stormwater retention facility disguised as a park. That was his intention. That's what it was supposed to be. But unlike lots of stormwater retention facilities, notice June 20th, 2018 at 3 p.m. Go ahead, hit the next one. 26 hours later, that's what's going on. There's a picnic going on in the park. So that water, the park handles that water, holds it for a period, and then it drains off, and then 26 hours later, we're able to use that field. That is really exciting. So you don't have to, it's a multi-use facility. It's not just a public use or public utilities facility. It's also a public used space. Go ahead. This was a recent addition. It wasn't planned for. The church across the alley. The last summer it rained a lot. I don't know if you know that or not, but it made lots of water, underground water, and there's the water table in this area here is it's just barely underneath the ground. And the church has always had a sump pump in the basement, but it could not keep up. There was water like crazy. So they put in a new pump that handled more, and they were dumping it out onto the alley. Well, that's a good solution, right? And they talked with us first because most of that water was going to end up going into the park, right? But what's the park for? Well, it's for runoff. So it's like, okay, that's fine. But that water laying there on the north side of the building, It turned into algae and was a slippery, slimy mess. We actually had some people that fell when we were walking down the alley. We're like, this is not a good thing. So we had an opportunity when MDU was working in the alley there last summer to talk to them about putting in a drain line that was like 30 inches below the surface directly out under the alley, and then now it empties directly into the park. Again, that's kind of an exciting thing. It's a temporary solution. You know how that's going to work. But something that's happened that we didn't expect is that pond was designed to be intermittent. It almost, before this, it almost always dried up, like in a certain period of time. But now it's got a constant source of water in it, so we have some issues that we didn't expect to deal with. Go ahead. All right, native plants. Just have a few slides here. This is native plants flourishing without watering. They just grow. They know what to do when it's 110 degrees. They know what to do when it's 20 below. You don't have to go out there and talk to them and pamper them. I don't know if you can see the upper left. That's a buffalo berry bush. We have a huge stand of buffalo berries, and that was 2 summers ago. They were just loaded with buffalo berries. This last summer, not quite so much. And there's some pollinators. Andrea probably saw. And they got some more pictures here, I think, of some species. The upper left is one of my favorite. That's some of the grass that we cut out on the prairie. It's a blue grama grass. It's got that funny little, we call it eyebrow seed head. You know, it's a horizontal seed head. And then columbine, and then I think the other one is maybe a thermopsis species. But so what we're doing, we're working with nature to create a wild space in downtown Rapid City. And the upper right-hand corner there, those plants flourish so much, we call them the fire department every few years and ask them if they'll come in and do a burn. And this, I don't know if you saw, we did that just this last month. Last month during April, they came in and did a burn again. And then we do routinely have ducks and rabbits that kind of hang around there in the park. I got to be honest with you, those ducks were there before we built the park. There was water every spring. They would come, just pair of mallards, and they would land in there. But they're glad that there's a regular pond for them now. Go ahead. Now, one of the things they found out in the stormwater garden report that the mines students did, that even though this park is exciting and there's lots of great things going on, the person that was doing the pollinator study was in the park a couple times when it rained. One time real hard, another time not very much. And she's like, this drainage is not working right. And so she came back with a team of, I think it was 3 others for her senior design project, and came in and observed all these different things and made recommendations how to actually improve the drainage of the park that would allow it to handle more volume of water. They said that the main drainage channel capacity would need to be improved. Also, the retention ponds, there's a second retention pond that hardly holds any water at all because water never gets to it. The channels weren't designed properly, so the water doesn't get there. And then a lot of the water just flows into the main lawn area, which is supposed to be a secondary holding area. It's supposed to, when the stream bed fills up, then it was supposed to go over there, but that's not happening. A lot of it's just running straight into the lawn. And then also there's things that can be done to decrease the sediment loading, which over the long term decreases the efficiency of a stormwater handling facility because the sediment kind of clogs things up. Go ahead, Dan. You can't see that very well, but we've got a website, TrinityEcoPrairiePark.com. We're on Facebook. You can sign up for a park newsletter on the website. We always need volunteers to take care of the grounds, raise money, host events, grant writers, and then we take donations too. So it's a private park, private property run as a public park is essence. So it's always important for us to get funds to keep the park going. I think that's about it. Go ahead. Trinity Eco Prayer Park. Any questions about that? Nathan, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I didn't think I was going to get out of here without Nathan asking a question. I planned on that.
This compared to the past
Yep. Yep, there's liability insurance that we
The
carry.
church covers that then, I guess, or-
I think it's actually the foundation. The foundation is a separate 501c3 from the church.
Okay. And then, what's the maintenance effort that's needed for that park?
Every summer, we hire a part-time groundskeeper who works about 15 hours a week. And also, in the past, we've utilized some volunteer help as well. But the park really is kind of sustainable in that respect too. I mean, you don't have to really look after it a lot. The main thing you try to do is look for things that you don't want growing in there, and go after those things. And then some of the stuff that grows really well, we have to try and keep it under railing because it'll take over. We're trying to do actually, even though it's a natural space, we're doing a very unnatural thing by trying to we have these 4 biomes in this quarter of a square block. I mean, that's not natural. Normally those things would kind of spread out. So,
Thank you.
sure. Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
Thanks, Bob.
I've been down there several times, just walk across the street from the garage. And do you have a special maintenance person to come through and try to pick up some of the trash that's been up in there? And what's the vandalism that you've noticed? Is there any?
Some, yeah. We had some of our solar lights were damaged really bad. The bollards. We had 3 of them that we recently replaced. That was the worst vandalism we have. There's occasional graffiti. That's pretty much the main thing. I think, there's a lot of people that use the park on a regular basis, including some of the transient people. I mean, they use the park, but they tend to appreciate the park. And I've heard that there's a lot of self-policing that goes on. That they're like, this is a good place. This is a good thing. We need to not mess with it. But the groundskeeper, he's involved in helping with that too. But I'll tell you, it's open space, and it doesn't. You can pick up stuff in there, and the wind blows, and there's more stuff in there right away. But
I remember being in one of your pictures there when you took us for a tour.
Oh yeah, you were there, weren't you?
So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Dan's got one.
Yeah, Dan.
Ken, what's the lifetime on that? For example, the drain tiles, how long do you think they'll last before they need to be dug up and replaced?
I don't really know. I should say that, I'm not an engineer or an architect or anything like that. What I know is what I've learned doing this project. So, yeah, I guess because of some of the sediment loading that takes place, that's one of the things that the mine students were concerned about, that we would have to be doing some of this stuff sooner than we probably should have. So, I guess I don't really know what the answer to that is.
What kind of drain tiles are they, do you know? Are they perforated pipe or are they chambers? Or?
Perforated pipe, yeah. Yeah, Ron.
Based on your experience, do you think this is a template that we could look at for other places in the city where we probably benefit a lot from some of this kind of circumstance?
Well, that sounds like a good lead-in, doesn't it, Jason?
Good straight man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, right? I mean, that we can do this, and I mean, this is a privately run, designed project. I feel like the city needs to be a little more creative in how they handle things. Finding ways to get individuals and businesses to do some of these things that maybe they aren't required to do. Or one of the things that they could do is that the landscaping code and the stormwater code are 2 separate things, and they really need to be integrated. Like, you get points for doing this, that, or the other thing, but then the stormwater does something else. And they've talked about it some, but they haven't done anything about it. But that would really help a lot. So yeah, I mean, that's the idea of it. It's designed to be a model for others to consider following. And I think part of the mission is to help homeowners even understand, even on a small scale. I think Jason might be talking about that, I don't know, but if everybody in the neighborhood, the idea is to keep the water from getting into the street in the first place. I mean, if we can do that, then you have less of a stormwater problem. And, you know, the stormwater is not treated. It just ends up in a body of water, a natural body of water, everywhere. That's just how stormwater works. And here it's Rapid Creek. Oh, yes, sir?
So during constructability, so you mentioned there's some design flaws in it, but were you present while they were constructing this? You know, were they driving their equipment around? You know, they're designed to infiltrate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're running your Bobcat and excavators around in this ground that's supposed to infiltrate, and you back it down, you're losing your infiltration capacity. So was there issues during the course of this, or the contractor didn't kind of get the picture?
Maybe. But the biggest issue, Jason, was that the 2015, I think, was where they did most of the construction, was like 2018. It rained like crazy. And I've got pictures of equipment in the park that's axle deep in water. I mean, water just kept coming in there all, you know, so they would do something, and then you'd have sediment and stuff wash in. I think that's what the biggest problem was, that why some of those things didn't turn out the way they were supposed to. But then, too, you know, the average construction crew probably doesn't understand how things are supposed to work, too, so there might have been some of that. But nature, I'll blame nature for most of it. Darn nature.
I was going to interject, since Director Koch brought up this as a model. I like this park. I think it's a very nice park. I think you guys did a great job with it. The concern that I have is, you know, we've all seen things in our journeys through life, and one of the things that I've seen when I was working in Seattle years ago was a little piece of property, smaller than this piece of property, but the city of Seattle wanted to make this little triangular piece of property a model, kind of like what you guys did. And so they installed a nice fountain, some benches there, finished off the ground nicely. It was a nice park until the homeless came in, the transients that you mentioned, and they took it over. And so they were using the fountain for their bathing and bathroom needs. They were sleeping on and under the benches. And if you walk through there, the stench of urine and feces was almost overwhelming at times. So, you know, since your project was associated with the church, you've heard the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intention. So that was a good example of that. And that's the concern that I have. If things like this aren't properly policed, they end up not being available to everybody because people won't want to go there anymore because they're not safe and they're dirty.
One of the things that we incorporated in consultation with the police department was something called crime prevention through environmental design. And that's where you have growth that, you know, is about this high, and then things like trees and stuff growing don't go any lower than this. So around the whole park you have a window to where you can see into the park. So that was incorporated into that. And also, you know, we were a little reluctant to put a lot of bushes in there, windbreaks and things like that. Well, we wanted to get a barrier between the park and Hardee's, you know. May I take your order, please? You know, as people come through there. So we put we designed, that whole part of the park has pokey things in it. The buffalo berry has lots of thorns in it, and you're not going to camp in a buffalo berry bush. And so we, you know, there's a lot of that forethought been involved in advance. And then also, like I said before, you know, the church feeds people. The church that is across the alley there. There's a relationship that's built with a lot of these people. We know a lot of these people, even though they're transient people. You know, they're not just people that come and go. A lot of them are regular people. So again, that relationship has helped us, I think, maintain the park in good order. And like I said, there's also self-policing that takes on with those people. So we've been very, very fortunate so far. And that was a concern that people had, Nathan, even before we built the park, that would be an issue. So far, it's worked out pretty well. Mr. Driscoll.
Did you mention the need for possible improvements of some sorts there at the end of your talk?
Yeah, the drainage issues, we might be looking at doing some things with that in the future.
Do you have any sort of a plan for, trying to address such improvements?
Well, the School of Mines study is, they did engineering work and everything. They have cost breakdown, and they've got some design drawings and everything that they actually did. So we have something that we can refer to, and at some point in the future, I was looking at trying to raise some funding to do that, to get that going. So.
Well, I guess we might be fair game for consideration from that standpoint. Just my sense is we'd probably be reluctant to be the only entity involved.
Oh, sure.
More of a potential partnership.
Yeah. All right.
That could be kept in mind.
I think that thought might have crossed my mind at one point. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate that thought. We just haven't got to the point where we're doing that. We're kind of working on some other things right now. We don't have a sign up in the park. That's kind of important. Like, people don't even know. They drive by, oh, that's nice. They don't know what it is. So it's kind of hard to raise money when people don't even know who you are or where you are. So anyway, yeah, I'll if I get something put together, I'll get hold of somebody and see if you'd be willing to see that. I did bring some brochures. They're up here. They're COVID optional, right? I mean, if you want to pick one up, you can. If not, that's fine. I understand. But normally, I would just pass them out and make you look at them, but I'm not doing that. So I thank you. I took a lot of time. I told you I get excited about this. Anything else? I don't want to cut off the discussion. I appreciate the invitation. I hope you feel like your funds were well spent by looking at that. So.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Very informative. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along, item number 10, pilot project for an inventory of impervious areas and green spaces that may have a potential for future stormwater mitigation measures, funding request. Director Driscoll?
I prepared a handful of little slides to kind of provide a bit more detail about this, and then Jason Phillips, who we know from the Green Roof Project, has got a handful first, but or also. But I thought before going into that, if you go back to your previous slide there, I think the funding amount, I think you had the original number which got updated slightly. I think that 24,731 was updated to 24,871 after the School of Mines Business Office, reviewed the budgetary end of the proposal. So I guess kind of to follow what tends to be our protocol, before launching into the overview, I guess I'll start out with a motion that we fund this at the 24,871 that's requested, and then wait to see if we've got a second before moving into an overview.
Okay, so a motion is made to fund this proposal. Is there a second to the motion?
So Dan, you made the motion?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, I've made the motion.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
So with that, just a few main points. Many of you are aware that Director Bierke and I have been kind of looking at some of the opportunities for stormwater management as sort of a thrust area that West Dakota might engage in the future. It's certainly my perception that there are a great number of impervious areas in the Rapid City area that were constructed before the advent of the modern best management practices that typically are utilized now. I kind of have a bit of a vision that it might be useful to try to develop a long-term program of beginning to retrofit some of these facilities, properties that are really inadequate from a stormwater management standpoint, and doing so, it inherently, slowly, but surely begin to accomplish improvements in the water quality and ecology of Rapid Creek. And in some cases, we may also be able to gain some mitigation of some of the localized flooding that typically occurs around the area. So, my sense has been that if we ever were to engage in such a program, a good first step would be basically to conduct an inventory of what's out there that might be good candidates for places to look to begin what we might think of as stormwater retrofits. So this proposal is basically for a pilot project, try to do a little bit of test driving on how we might do this. We don't know all of the ins and outs of exactly how to go about doing it. I think we're going to have to feel our way through. But our intent is to basically identify 5 basins in which we might potentially work, and plan to work to at least whatever extent possible in at least 3 of those basins, maybe 4, maybe 5, but identify 5 and certainly work to whatever reasonable extent we can in 3 of them, and basically to try to develop approaches that could, if desired, be woven into a broader inventory effort in the future. So, kind of the primary end of it would be to try to inventory impervious surfaces and also, nearby green spaces that could be used for such things as we just saw, Mr. Steinken talking about, be it rain gardens, small retention facilities, things like that. Another thing, we'd also try to come up with a list of what I'll call inventory parameters, ways to characterize some of these properties, basically relative to the, perhaps a future prioritization scheme, how could we kind of cherry pick where might we go to accomplish the greatest benefits with the least amount of funding. And again, a pilot project, so the approaches we try to develop would be somewhat preliminary, but if we find what seems like a sound direction here, it's something that could be perhaps fine-tuned and incorporated in a future project that might include additional basins. So, next slide. I think our main focus is stated in the proposal. I guess I should point out in your packet, is the official proposal on this. The focus would be really to look most closely at properties with the best potential for relatively small retrofits. Basically the large infrastructure tends to be things that are typically addressed by the county planning and zoning department or Rapid City Public Works Department. We'd probably be looking at smaller things, akin to the Trinity Eco Prayer Park or the like. I think our focus would largely exclude 3 main settings. First of which would be the downtown corridor, the kind of heavy on the pavement and very short on green spaces. There's not a lot of real potential for what we might think of as small retrofits. We'd probably, largely stay away from the residential lots. There's just way too many of them to deal with. Those become an individual homeowner basis. Not to say that we couldn't consider such things, but, to try to do an inventory of every residential lot within these basins probably would be overwhelming. So we would probably focus on things like churches, schools, businesses, libraries, Black Hills workshop type of sites. There are a lot of things where I think we could find potential. And a third area we would probably exclude are the basically new development areas. Most of the time now with the codes that are in place, these best management practices tend to be implemented as part of the development plan, and to a large extent what we would do I don't think would be necessary there. So the next slide, our plan would be to be working with the Public Works Department in Pennington County. Their Planning and Zoning Department is basically their stormwater entity. Looking to have them work with us and provide technical assistance, not requesting any funds from them, but planning to collaborate. We've been in communication with them on this. Ways they could assist would be with helping us select and prioritize for the pilot project, providing GIS coverages such as the drainage basin divides, topography. They may have something on the impervious surfaces already. Certainly there are 27 named drainage basins basically within the county. They have what they call drainage basin infrastructure plans, where they've identified at least some number of what you might think of as larger scale projects that might be useful. So things like that could be woven in. And we would hope they might be able to assist with these inventory variables, and how do we go about figuring out what kind of variables would be useful for us. So this is actually an email from Brandon Quiet with the Rapid City Public Works Department. He'd reviewed the proposal we had, and he says that they're happy to assist with this project, and Mr. Phillips, if this is funded, we'd be welcome to coordinate directly with them on that. I don't have a similar letter from the county. We've been in discussion, and Brittany Molitor, the head of planning and zoning, says she likes the idea, but to actually send an email of support, she'd have to run it through the county commission and get approval. There wasn't time to do that. So the next slide, just a few little slides to kind of give some examples. This is about a block west of where I live. This is about a block east of the intersection of Minnesota and 5th Street on the north side of Minnesota. There's a complex of basically 3 different medical buildings on this area, and this is kind of the southeast corner of those. But what you're looking at is, basically the green space there is the south end of a small detention facility. There's a parking lot there where the arrow comes in. There's a little curb cut that allows the parking lot to drain into the detention cell, and then just to the right of the tree, right where the sidewalk comes along, you can see a little bit of a green PVC pipe that comes in there. So the drainage is directed into this. It's pretty well grasped. The next slide then shows where the location is. So you can see the arrow there down in the lower right corner shows that's right up against Minnesota and Wisconsin is where that cell is at. And I guess I didn't bring a pointer, but in essence, this whole little bit lighter covered strip you see along here is basically a series of small detention cells there. And I'll just walk you through a couple slides. If you go to the next one that show you what they look like. That's then the north end of the same cell, and you see that kind of black or gray pickup truck there. If we go to the next slide, then that's looking the other direction. So there's a little berm in between that separates these 2 cells. And then if we go next slide, takes you farther north. We're looking northward to the north end of that cell, and there at the north end you can see kind of a clump of trees and that kind of tan-colored shed. So this is the cell farthest to the north, and you can see basically on your left, there's a culvert that connects it to the, so we just left, and then on the right side, you can see a larger culvert. I think that brings drainage off the roof probably into this cell. And then the next slide, you're just looking away to the north, and the whole hillside here is kind of contoured to, I guess I should have stayed up here. Can everybody hear me okay from up here? It's contoured. There's another parking lot up here, and it funnels all the water down into there. So the main point is that when they're building new, it's easy to do the landscaping, the drainage, the topography to accommodate this. It tends not to be so simple when you're trying to retrofit, but you don't need particularly large areas. Pretty small little areas can be very effective. So the next slide then is just the next notch to the north. This is a Black Hills Workshop dormitory facility that would be the sort of thing we'd tend to look at, in our inventory. And what we've got here is, you can see a sidewalk, and there's downspouts coming off here. The runoff from the roof hits the downspouts, and it comes down the sidewalk there. One way that could be fixed, if you were designing for stormwater, you could move the sidewalk over 10 feet and leave the low spot open, and instead of the water hitting the concrete, you could have the water on the grass, but instead the water everything comes off the roof is going to go almost straight to the sidewalk out onto the parking lot. And then the next slide, are you wishing you had a microphone up here?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking
It's hard to get you on the.
I got an extra one here, so.
Is it COVID certified? Can
Well,
I touch that baby and just hold it?
I can't guarantee anything, but yeah. Let me get is it working here? Let's try that, Dan.
How's that?
Okay,
Does it sound like
it'll
it's
probably
working?
work if it's on the ground too.
Okay, that'll be fine. Okay, so you advance the slide. So this is pretty typical, the parking lot drains straight out onto the street, and there's basically just no mitigation there. About the only mitigation you could have for that would be to put in a mechanical separator, and those tend to be a pretty expensive endeavor to tear up a street to do that. I think the only time you could do that is if a street is scheduled to be rebuilt in the first place. So the next slide, then this is just south of Robbinsdale Park on the north side of East Elk Street, the Black Hills Community Church. It's no doubt been there for quite a few decades. You can see we've got a nice green area, but there's quite a bit more green space there than what we see in the photo. But the next slide, it shows the typical situation. You can kind of get the sense there's a kind of a low spot down the center of the parking lot, and it basically drains from both sides into the middle of the parking lot, and again right straight out onto the street. So, how you do a retrofit, the expense would be way out of reach. Then the next slide, we're looking around would be basically the east side. You've got a little bit of a swale here, which you can see a downspout. It catches, I'm sure, some runoff there, but it ends up the next slide. Then I guess I missed it in there, but it comes onto this parking lot. And the parking lot, you can kind of get the sense of how it drains. There's actually a little spot right here. Everything runs underneath the sidewalk and right out onto the street. And you can see the blacktop is nice and black and new. You're not going to tear up parking lots like that. The expense is just way out of reach. So then the next slide. This is just a little bit farther north from there. This is the Robbinsdale Park area. This is the Circle S convenience store on East Fairmont. Then there's several old folks or nursing homes. There's a nice big open space that could conceivably be worked with. Several apartment buildings. There's a lot of room to work with things, but it doesn't show here, this Google Earth image is a little bit too old, but this shows a bunch of trees and stuff. Well, since then, it's been several years ago, that was all torn out, and now there's a large detention facility, a very large, detention cell there. And so basically this whole area has been, largely mitigated, and that'd be kind of one of the things we'd be looking at, what is available downstream in terms of detention facilities would be, perhaps some sort of a prioritization feature. So the next slide might be the last one. This is the parking lot, and I just happened to notice one of the things that kind of gets the wheels turning, that the parking lot is pretty ratty there, and it'll probably be getting replaced in a few years. And not that we would work here, but that would be one of the variables that we could look at, I think. I mean, places where you've got a parking lot that's due to be replaced soon, it's probably a lot more feasible to look at tearing stuff out and doing a little bit of regrading. I mean, one of the main things is being able to just move the water from impervious onto some place where you can mitigate it. So I guess with that, the next slide is not really a slide. It just we can hear next from Jason Phillips, and I'd say let's hear from Jason before I take any questions. Is that okay with you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. So the whole idea is to turn stormwater into a civic asset and not a civic liability. So right now our stormwater is a civic liability. It creates flooding, it creates pollution, and it creates detrimental effects to our ecology. So how can we design with nature and utilize nature to create a civic asset out of stormwater? And so that's the big picture goal and the whole idea of it. But as Dan said, we got to start somewhere. We got to know what we have, where we have it, what's going on. So the city, they got a lot of great stuff going on. They have a floodway at the expense of 200 and some people that died, right? So during our flood in 72, they've done extensive work all throughout the floodway and the greenway, and have been doing what we call end-of-pipe stormwater solutions. So they're building BMPs and these best management practices within the floodway to buffer that stormwater before it gets into the creek. And so we've seen a lot of issues through Rapid Creek. You guys have funded studies that have showed that we've got polluted. Rapid Creek doesn't meet beneficial use criteria often during stormwater events. Next slide, Dan. So this here just shows a bunch of pictures of impacts of urbanization. So stormwater is one of the leading sources of non-point source pollution. Flooding is the leading deadliest natural disaster. It's cost $34 million since 2010. It's the second deadliest weather-related hazard. It's killed almost 5,000 people between 1959 and 2005. And another 1,147 between 2006 and 2018. So it's an issue everywhere. And we've seen it here in the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of flash flooding happening. We haven't had any deaths here, but the 1972 flood is still on the top of the deadliest floods in the U.S. So all those impervious surfaces, right? So the leading deadliest weather-related event is from heat. And so all these impervious surfaces that we have gathers and stores that heat and then releases that heat at the night when the earth is trying to cool, and it creates heat islands. So it increases the temperature of the cities. So are we at that point right now? Sure, you can stand out in the parking lot and feel the heat and then go stand out in the field and feel that difference. Do we have a heat island over Rapid City? I don't know. I can't answer that. But as we keep growing, these are things to think about, and it's a lot easier to do it when we have an understanding of what's going on and where we're at and where things are. So next slide. So this shows Rapid City. This is the EPA water program feature. The red line running through Rapid City is Rapid Creek. Red designates it as it's impaired for its beneficial use. picture on the right is the Robbinsdale detention pond that Dan was talking about. So this is after we had the flood events. And when we went on that tour with, when visited the Eco Prayer Park, I think Nathan and Robert were there. Was anybody else?
Yeah, I was there.
So the designer of the Robbinsdale detention facility, we went there and he ended up talking about their design, and they're dealing with 10,000 CFS coming into that detention pond. Hence the car floating in the detention pond after the storm. And it wasn't a 100-year event. You know, there's pockets of Rapid City that had, you know, they almost 3 inches of rain. So a 100-year, 2-hour event in Rapid City is 3.1 inches of rain in a 2-hour time period. So there's isolated pockets where they found that, but the majority of the rainfalls were less than 2 inches. And so we have a lot of water that we're dealing with coming in. So this is an end-of-pipe solution, right? So what can we do upgrading and up in the watersheds to help mitigate that? And that's kind of part of this pilot study, is to really inventory these things and figure out where everything is, what people have done, inventory all the BMPs that are in place. You know, in the cities, they're working at getting this updated, but all their drainage basin studies they're old. They need to be updated, and they're in the process of it, and it takes a lot of work. We're not proposing that we're doing that, but we're trying to work with the city to help that endeavor and have a piece of that puzzle. So the next slide. So Dan's kind of mentioned what we're trying to do. We're trying to inventory the impervious areas and the impervious areas. The green spaces are the pervious. The impervious is your parking lots, your rooftops. But the big thing is your directly connected impervious areas. So those are your areas where your rooftop is connected to your parking lot, that's connected to the street, that's connected to the storm sewer, that goes into your receiving water bodies. So those are the areas where we got to really inventory and focus on and see where those are. Disconnecting your downspout from your driveway and putting it in your yard is one step of a mitigation. You know, that any little bit will start helping. Some areas you're not going to want to do that. You don't want water just by your foundation. So areas that people can't do it. But areas where people can is getting that understanding of where we could do it, where we can't do it, and how it's all going to work, that network. People are doing a green roof out at the airport, the Trinity Park downtown, BMP swells, all over. We got these isolations of things happening. But we don't have an understanding of how they all work together in that network of how the stormwater works. Our storm sewers are networks. The city knows where they are, they know how they're connected, they know where they're flowing. So what's it going to look like if we have all this green infrastructure in place, managing stormwater on site, and how that all is going to play into the bigger picture? So this shows all the named watersheds within the Rapid City area. You know, so if we're going to look at 3 to 5 of them, where there's a lot, there's 27 of them. So really prioritizing and kind of looking at them to figure out. So Dan mentioned that we're not going to look at the downtown, but we got a pretty good idea of what's going on downtown. A lot of impervious surfaces. So to really inventory that is really, we're not going to gain much knowledge out of there. I've done a lot of work in the downtown basin. I know where things could be and where we could fill in those gaps and try to create these networks that not only are stormwater networks, but turn into ecological corridors for pollinators, for insects, for wildlife. And it's that connection that we're all a part of this ecosystem. And water is the basis of these ecosystems, right? Next slide. So again, this is, kind of, Dan's mentioned this. We're going to really look into the literature. What kind of tools are out there? What already exist? If they have some good tools out there, we could use them to help this study along. If not, we're going to help, develop these and kind of work through this process, which we're not entirely sure the flow of it and how it's going to be vetted out. but that's what we're gonna dig into and look at. And the project I'm working on right now, though, it's the pollinators. They looked at the Eco Prayer Park, the Meadowbrook Rain Garden, and Kevin Custer, which is an old kind of historic wetlands area that was created 20, 30 years ago. And so we're looking at the biodiversity within these infrastructures and kind of mapping out the insect pollinators and then the surroundings, and then try to fill in these gaps of where we could have the biggest need for stormwater management and kind of create a corridor. So some of the deliverables would be, you know, create a geodatabase using GIS. The city's got some GIS databases that have been slowly being produced that we have access to, that we would be able to have access to. And so that's going to kind of be geared towards which basins need it, which ones don't, what do they already have, where can we fill in and provide more information. You know, and then obviously we're going to have a final report with recommendations and where we could move forward, what we found, what worked best, what didn't. Keep track, keep a timed inventory on what it's really taken and how long it's taken. Site visits, going to do site visits. You know, so if we find that an area has all this impervious, directly connected impervious areas, and we can't really link it to parking lots, it could be a residential neighborhood that everybody's got their houses with their gutters flowing to the street, you know? So then we start kind of looking at those areas, but to go and look at every individual city and lot, you know, house would be pretty time consuming and depth. So the next slide just kind of shows the budget and the timeline. It's a 6-month project starting in July, running through December. The School of Mines reworked the budget to fit all their little pockets of money. Don't ask me how they figured it out because I have no idea. But that's kind of the rough budget of the tuition and admission. Materials and supplies is basically any kind of data storage we need, laptop, GIS access, GPS to go out and map these things, handheld GPS, the laptop support from the School of Mines. I think it's another $400 that's kind of included in that. Then the 39%, of course, that the School of Mines would take to keep my closet lit. So I'll open up for questions. I know Dan talked for a while, and we'll keep it moving.
Jason, let's just back up one slide before we start. Actually, that decision support tool development, that's really not a specified project or product. You know, the wording in the proposal, you know, basically it actually specifically avoids saying, we'll say, here's a formal way of prioritizing basins or potential locations. The intent is that perhaps we could work towards that in a future phase, but you know, for the
it wouldn't be a tool, just development of this process and this kind of the support tool that we use to develop the process.
Right, the inventory parameters that we would come up with would be geared towards use in such a thing, but you know, the funding level we're looking at, we were specifically saying, we can't say, here's how you prioritize. We'd like to be able to say, here are things that could be used to prioritize. So I just wanted to clarify on that.
Jason?
Questions? Bob?
Jason, in your proposal, it talks a couple of different places about the cost-benefit ratio. Could you give me sort of a hint of what that means?
Well, it's kind of like looking at the parking lot. If you got a brand new parking lot where, you know, looking at there's an area that needs that could use some stormwater management, you know, looking at the cost of tearing up a brand new parking lot versus putting in some stormwater BMPs versus the old parking lot that may need to be redone and a retrofit that could be in there. You know, so looking at these areas and having it be a parameter of that cost to benefit ratio and, you know, really kind of mapping that out of where the best priorities or highest priorities would be. You know, so we wouldn't want to go propose tearing up a church's brand new parking lot to help stormwater mitigation.
And then to change topics almost completely. In South Canyon, where I grew up, water was running 3 foot deep past our houses down the street, and they had pastures that the water had to come through. I don't know what kind of a downpour we had, and this was in the 60s. But that kind of effort, so you're not going to be in the residential areas at all of any of these locations?
Well, no, so I wouldn't say that. We're just not gonna, there's not enough time to focus on every single house, every single lot. But when we go in and identify these areas, you know, the Mead drainage, there's all the flooding issues going on. So then we're gonna start doing kind of a deeper dive into, you know, where are these problem areas? What's creating it, what's going on, and then, you know, there might be residential houses involved in that portion of the study. But to say that we're going to come out and go look at every single house would be, we don't want to put that impression onto it. And the city is done, so we're going to work with what we've got. I mean, our stormwater fees are based on the amount of impervious surface versus our property size. I mean, that's how they gauge our stormwater fees, and if it's residential, commercial, and got different tiers of it.
Can I clarify just a little bit?
A second. Yeah, I was going to ask you about, it might be Lime Creek that flooded past our house.
I don't know where you live.
But well, when I was a kid, it's out by South Canyon, between Pinedale and, let's see, that area.
It comes in right
Right.
west of the Canyon Lake Senior Center, and it steers on up towards the outdoor campus, and then west of there, northwest of there.
I know right where you're at. There's a big floodplain that runs right through there.
What I'm going to ask is, will you check in when you're trying to do the background search? Look for significant floods on seriously different areas of the town, because it wasn't flooding on the other side past Stevens High School where it sits now. It was flooding only in this one drainage, and I wish we had a cave to study.
Well, I walked through there. I've got pictures. We did a study through there, and I mean, they got a concrete channel that they've turned a natural channel into a concrete channel, and then it turns a 90. They've got a few of them in Rapid City. Water doesn't like to do a 90-degree turn, and we have them. And guess what happens there? Flooding. You know, so all those are going to be, how do we prioritize? You know, is that going to be one of the basins that we do? You know, and so it'll be interesting as we develop this of where the city is going to see their prioritization interests and where their needs are, the county, and, you know, really asking the community, you know, where are flooding issues, where are issues. And I've kind of been keeping tabs on that and kind of have ideas of where some of these problem areas are. But
my area, about half of my area is all downhill, and it all floods right toward Sheridan Lake Drive. And everything that falls on the hill, that doesn't sink in or isn't captured by the Skyline Drive, right down past the USGS, and then into Rapid Creek. And those areas, those are still populated, and they continue to get more and more people all the way up the valley south.
mm-hmm.
Anyhow, the clarification I was going to offer is we would work really primarily within the residential areas, but as opposed to the individual homes, we'd be looking at the churches, schools, libraries, businesses, et cetera, that are more in residential type areas as opposed to downtown core area. And then just, of course, within whatever basins end up getting selected for the pilot.
Nathan's got a question.
So, I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying money for stormwater management. We've got staff that's hired to do stormwater management. So, if I'm already buying that with my tax dollars, why do I want to pay for that again with my West Dakota tax?
Well, I can't speak for the city, but I'll give you my opinion. And we pay a very, very, very low rate for our stormwater fee. we're more than half less than what Sioux Falls pays. If I were to go to the city and ask, if I'm managing stormwater at my lot and I have zero runoff, am I going to not have to pay my stormwater fee? And they're going to say absolutely not, because we pay a very small amount. And I've had the discussion with the city. Is there incentives that we could do to do it? And they don't have enough manpower. They don't have enough manpower. They don't have people to do these studies. They don't have on staff people that could handle this. And so it's not getting done. The basin studies are 1996, early 2000s. I mean, they don't have the capacity or the funds to really get this kind of study done. And that's why they're so interested in working with us.
I might just say something on that. 'Cause I used to work for the city and we're developing those drainage fees. Those drainage fees are really for the larger projects like Robbinsdale, $1.5 million to build that detention dam, and that's just one spot in one drainage basin. And they've got issues in every one of those drainage basins that those individual projects are very expensive. And I think they collect about $3 million a year.
Yeah, and half of it.
And half of it is maintenance.
Half of it's maintenance.
So they have like $1.5 million or $2 million a year for projects, improvement projects that are taking care of larger volumes of water, rather than these. It all accrues. I mean, if the little projects build up, if it keeps going down, pretty soon the person on the bottom of the hill gets flooded. And so what you're talking about here is going into these areas like churches and back in the residential areas and holding that water back before it gets down to the bottom of the hill.
At least getting an inventory on it and
give us an inventory for it.
See where that need is and where we could possibly implement things. And I'm surprised the city hasn't come in here and asked you guys for money, to be honest, to do some of their drainage-based studies.
Yeah, they were here once, not too long ago.
To do drainage basin studies?
Yeah. Nathan?
So I just want to follow up on that. I don't think it's our job as a board here to supplement the budget of the stormwater detention or the stormwater management people. I don't think that's why we exist. I mean, that's fine that you have an opinion that we're undertaxed on our stormwater management, but I don't think it's our job to make up the difference in what you or whoever else feels should be spent on that stormwater management. The other issue that I have with this is it seems to be driven in large part by one of our directors, and I don't know that that's the model that we should be following. I like the model that Trinity Echo Prayer Park had, where those people came to us and asked us for the money, and then the decision was made based on that need of one of our constituents, rather than having one of our directors go out and shop for a project to spend money on something he thought would be interesting. I don't think that's a good model. I understand that might be the way that he might be used to doing things as a former federal official. I've seen that many times. I've mentioned it in these board meetings many times. I don't think that's a good model. I think it results in dollars not being spent wisely. I don't think it's our job to go out and gin up projects to spend money on things that somebody thinks is interesting. I think we should be addressing real needs for people that are needy, and stuff that's a legitimate project that's going to benefit many people, rather than us going out. And that's another issue that I have, is potential for us picking winners and losers here, finding places that we think should benefit from a future project. Again, I don't think that's our job. I don't think it's our job to go out and help somebody replace a parking lot or whatever. That's their job. It's their property. And if there's some stormwater management issue there, then they can coordinate that with the people that were already paying to do that work.
Dan?
I'd like to offer a perspective that, as I mentioned earlier, it's clear to me that the single biggest detriment on the water quality and ecology of Rapid Creek is the urban runoff that occurs. As we discussed, newly developing areas are in much better condition than those that were built up 10 or 100 years ago or more. Those areas are not going to get fixed by what they oftentimes refer to as the rain tax. I personally can't think of a better use of our West Dakota dollars than to go out and try to improve stormwater management in the areas where nobody else really has a mechanism to do it. Thank you.
Ron?
I'd like to go back a little bit to some of the things you mentioned earlier. I don't know if it was you or Dan, maybe both of you. You sorted out some areas where you didn't think you were going to work. Downtown, the urban, the individual residential properties, et cetera. But one of the things I was wondering about in your kind of conceptual view of it is these 5 pilot watersheds you might start to look at. Were you thinking of any kind of criteria there that would help you examine what those, or figure out what those 5 pilot ones might be? Like, would they be examples like Director Williams mentioned, where there's historic problems, like in the Line Creek Basin, or where it might have the maximum benefit to, say, the cold water fishery of Rapid Creek? If we could do things upslope there that would complement city infrastructure, or how are you thinking about, these 5 areas, and what kind of things would you use to sort them out from the other places that need so much work?
So all of the above, really, looking at so we want to do all of them, but we can't do all of them for $24,000. So, which 5 do we start at? So we want to try to get 5 basins that will cover the biggest swath of variables and roadblocks and hurdles and different outcomes and different situations, so we get an idea of what it's going to take to really inventory these basins to provide it for all 27 of these basins. So looking at areas of flooding, looking at areas where they don't have data. The city's already got a lot of data, so working with the city to find out, where are these key areas that you need to know more about, that we could start putting these pieces of the puzzle together and have a better understanding on the whole picture instead of just these little areas. So it wouldn't be much sense to go study an area, a floodplain, that they've already have floodplain mapping and data on, but build out from that and build into areas that we need to get more data on, and we don't have an understanding on what's going on and where the existing basins, I would imagine the Meade Hawthorne Basin would be one. There's been a lot of flooding. Residents have been in the city council, and there's been a lot of issues with flooding going on. I imagine that would be a priority of, different areas that are flooding. Looking at all those parameters and not really trying to pick or choose who's going to get the benefit within this initial pilot study, but cover as many basins that are different so we get an idea of what it's really going to take and how long it's going to take to do a basin.
So you might pick, a problematic one like Line Creek or Wonderland that has historic problems, that run red, like in 5 seconds after the rain falls. You might go down the street and look at something different.
Absolutely.
And I watched Line Creek.
Look at one out in Rapid Valley, versus, the land cover change and the soil cover change from Rapid Valley up into the Wonderland Basin and the Chapel Hills, the Red Rock Basin, and they've all got their own unique characteristics and challenges, and so to try to get a broad perspective would be the goal.
I'll chime in. I had a slide that addressed that too. It basically is stated in the proposal. The intent would be through discussions with the city, the county, ourselves, and the school folks, to kind of compare notes on what would be a good cross section space. So.
My biggest concern is that we're really focused, I mean, it seems focused on this graphic. And so if I'm a taxpayer and I live in Hill City, or if I'm a taxpayer and live out by Fox Elder, why are my tax dollars going to fund this?
Because what we do upstream directly impacts the people downstream. And we're at the headwaters.
I was,
But I'll take it one more step. I have to disagree that runoff is the biggest problem. It's sewage that's the biggest problem. 6 months out of the year, our sewage treatment plant shuts off its UV lights, and we get nothing but sewage going on downriver. And then when we looked at it with one of our other studies, the area between the bottom of Canyon Lake and East St. Patrick's Creek Bridge, there's something seriously wrong, and there's not a lot of mitigation of that sewage problem. Because there's raw sewage running downstream year-round. And it's human, not just goose poop or dog park or whatever. So, this might be the second worst problem. But the worst problem is the fact that our city hasn't taken care of the sewage problems that we have. And we want to help them, I guess, in this way, to try to help focus them. Is that the idea? Try to get them to focus on trying to mitigate the runoff. Because that has to be secondary compared to the sewage. Because we're just polluting the stream all the way to Missouri.
Yeah, so the sewage coming out of the wastewater treatment plant it's a point source pollution.
Yeah, but they have a whole 8-mile beach where there's no point source other than the 8 miles of creek.
And I never said stormwater was the leading. It's one of the leading sources of non-point source pollution. There's a lot of other sources to it, but stormwater in urban areas is one of the leading ones. But yeah, anything that we could do to protect our water, we need to do. And I feel that this is a good first step of really understanding what's going on. And we've been talking about this for numerous years. I don't know how long you've been a director, but we've been having these discussions at the School of Mines since at least 2016, 2017, when I was working on the Urban Waters Small Grant. So I've been doing this type of work my whole entire higher educational career. So this wasn't the first discussion of Dan said, hey, I got this idea, I want you to do this. We've been having these discussions for multiple years, and Dan's been a part of these discussions.
question from the audience?
I have a comment and a question. I'm currently serving on the Pennington Conservation District Board, and I'm the only person that lives inside the Rapid City limits on that board. And I constantly hear them bad-mouthing Rapid City about their stormwater.
Okay.
That the people east of Rapid City would be delighted. Those ranchers out there, they're losing acreage, literally. Their land is going into the creek because the water flow is so fast. And so they would be thrilled for us to do something about that.
I was at that meeting when we had the discussion about what happens after, huh?
That wasn't the only meeting that discussion. It comes up a lot.
Yeah, that meeting I was at, that was an item that came up, and those people lived out there their whole lives and have been on those ranches for their whole lives, and they've seen definitely increase under a rainfall event. The flows have increased over the years, which I believe, and the bank erosion and things that are occurring down there. So they were speaking in terms of hoping the city keeps working on their stormwater program, because it's affecting their livelihood down there. A lot of places, they have those to move cattle back and forth across the creek, and they can't do it because there's so much water in the creek. So it's not just in the city. And the other thing, too, is that there's several of the drainage basins that are in the county that come into the city. So, and there's nobody, there's gaps in there. I live out at Red Rocks. Well, that's in the city. But from where Red Rocks is to where it gets down to Chapel Valley is in the county. And a lot of that and the new development out there, they built detention dams out there, retention facilities, and they're holding that water back. But that water, once it leaves that development out there, it's red. You know that, Ron. I mean, upstream of Canyon Lake, we got red water every time. It's raining out there coming down through Chapel Valley. And who's dealing with that? Is it really a city problem? Is it a county problem? Whose problem is it? Somebody needs to take a look at that. And so I think part of what we're doing is, it might be a little bit, but if a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, if it'll help down the road, I think it's a good investment.
I had a question too.
Sure.
So this might be beyond the scope of what you're doing, but let's say you identify a church parking lot, it's something that's not publicly owned. How do you foresee that being taken care of? I mean, if it's private, what's the incentive, what's the motivation? Is that not part of,
That's not part of this proposal at all. I mean, in the future, it could be just like what was done with Trinity is, someone says, well, we're interested. I mean, that to me would be something in the future after we identify. To me, it would make sense to say, well, where are the lowest hanging fruits, and let's start communications with these people or with these entities, be it private businesses, churches, schools, of course, is not the city, that's the school system, but there's a lot of different entities involved, and, look for other partners. I don't think this is something that West Dakota would fund on its own, but, that's very much a future direction. Right now, I guess my vision is, and, I've just worked directly with Jason and the school. I've been talking with these people for, a number of months now, and, I've been heavily involved in crafting the proposal, and a lot of it, a great deal of it involves my vision. This is where we go in the future, but to me, the very first step is you really say, what's out there? Where are the lowest hanging fruits? Where can we get the most mileage for the smallest amounts of funds? And as mentioned in the proposal, where are the places we might bring in the most partners? So, good question.
Nathan?
I just wanted to, again, I don't think that's the right approach. I think Trinity has a champion and Ken and probably others over there, and they drove that project to success. And I think that's the model that should be used. But I had a question for Ken 10 minutes ago. What was it that you mentioned earlier?
about the rural ranchers, these things?
Yeah, okay, so your group that you sit on, the other board, were there stormwater management people there? People that were paying?
Well, it's the same geographic area as this western Pennington County.
Right, were there stormwater management people from Rapid City or the county at the meeting?
No, they were just, it's just a course of conversation.
Were they invited to the meeting?
I don't know.
Somebody just brought it up. It was not on the agenda. I was at that meeting.
I guess the point is that we're paying people already through our tax dollars to do these things. So that's my point. This seems like a double taxation thing. Paying people to do this, and then we're going to pay other people to do the same stuff.
Any other questions? Dan?
So I'm trying to understand how you determine success on, even beyond this when you start implementing some of these things. Are there monitoring stations in these basins where you have historical data you can look at and see the efficacy of these
Well,
measures?
so we're not trying to implement anything
Right,
within
I
this
know.
proposal.
I know.
We're not studying how effective a BMP works, if it doesn't work, if it does work. We're just getting an idea of where everything is and mapping it out. You know?
Right.
And so in the future, you know, if we could start implementing these and researching them, I know Galen is starting to look at, you know, how well do these BMPs work and these types of BMPs and looking at that for the city, but we're not collecting that kind of data.
But you must be looking at some data to make a decision on which areas you're going to focus on. Is that-
Which 5 basins?
Yeah, and where in those basins? I'm just wondering, where do you get that data? I'm kind of new to this.
So the city is going to be a key player of really understanding, you know, where is the need of more information, where they don't have a good understanding of what's going on. You know, they got these basin studies that are outdated, and there's been a lot of development that's happened in the last 20, 30 years since these basin studies. So really getting an understanding of all the new development, construction, and all the BMPs that are in place and the areas that aren't, and really start mapping that out. So I worked on the downtown one. The city provided me their database, where they hired, I think, Forefront, and a part of their updating their downtown drainage basin study. And so they have GIS data that they mapped out, and we started using that to look at our pollinator study. You know, so that was kind of the idea of why we're not going to be looking at the downtown basin. You know, so out of the 27, that downtown one isn't going to be on the list because they've already have a good grasp on what's going on there, and if somebody has kind of updated that basin. You know, so we're going to look in areas where we need to get a better understanding of what's going on in these basins and kind of gear it towards that way. You know, so the whole pilot study is really inventorying what we got, where it's at, and kind of start mapping that network out, and then trying to fill in the gaps and helping areas where there's, you know, situations, flooding and poor water quality, and, you know, further down the road, the next phase would be, you know, hey, this is kind of where we found we could use some implementation projects, and then we're not sure who's going to end up doing that or figuring that out. But if we have that information to provide to the city and create that discussion, would help.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, I guess there's a motion on the floor for approving this proposal. I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
1 nay from Nathan. Thank you, everybody. Should we take it? Do we need a short bathroom break or? Huh? Let's take a short break. I know you're up next. It's 8 o'clock. We'll take a 10-minute break.
Okay, we should be rolling.
Okay, item number 11. Bob Williams, do you want to introduce Dr. Chapman?
Once again, Dr. Chapman's here to talk a little bit about the proposal for the next steps for the Missouri River. And it dovetails right into the partner and the discussion we've been having already. And what I think we need to be looking at is, I'd like to have her give her presentation, but I'd also like to start by making the motion just as we did earlier, that we approved $24,500 for this Missouri River Water Project pipeline study, which she's going to present. So.
Okay, there's a motion on. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Linda, and you have the floor.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's so good to see you again. My colleagues who joined me last
Can you stand in front of the mic?
meeting send their greetings as well. And we were thinking about how much has changed since we were all last together and that sort of thing. And so I did not prepare slides as we did so last time about some of the work in utilizing Missouri River water with major water development projects, and the importance and the change that it's made for so many citizens in South Dakota and around the area as well. And the importance of really laying a good foundation for whatever organization there might be to really explore bringing that Missouri River water west. And so the proposal, as we've, in following up from our discussions at our last meeting, is to begin that work to build that foundation. And it starts with talking with various decision makers across the western part of South Dakota, and our very important stakeholders like the city of Rapid City, all the way to smaller communities, county commissions, perhaps other water development districts as well, and really finding out whether or not we have a consensus and initial interest in working on a project ultimately that would bring water west. And what we are proposing is to do that initial, I would call it almost like an environmental scan of the interest of different partners over the next few months and bring the results back to you at your next meeting in the form of a report. And at that point is almost another decision point to move ahead. But we think that it would make sense then at that time for those who have expressed interest in exploring this further to start meeting and making a charter, if you will, on how to work together and make decisions about how to proceed. It's not saying yes or no, we're going to build a new pipeline from the Missouri River, but it begins to lay that groundwork, that foundation to move in that direction if the individuals are interested in doing so. I mentioned to the chairman during the break that if you move ahead with this proposal, I would very much like to have perhaps a subcommittee or a few directors who might be interested to talk with as we're developing this with the goal of moving out quite smartly on from a time perspective to be able to bring you the recommendations by the end of the calendar year. So with that, I'll just see if you have any questions. Perhaps.
Is there any questions? No questions? Oh, Nathan.
Cheryl, can you remind us of the work that Banner has done in the past as far as developing water resources?
Thank you. Yes, Nathan, I will. Perhaps the most recent projects are the Lewis and Clark project in East River, again, that takes Missouri River water from nearby groundwater, actually, and is a major project that's been going on for many years, decades now, really, in the development of that, working with communities not only in eastern South Dakota, but western Minnesota as well. And then almost to be considered a West River project, the Mini Washte Water Project takes water from the Missouri River north of Pierre and comes inland about 6 miles, is treated, and then goes to Eagle Butte. And the initial name of the organization was Tri-County because it brought water to 3 counties within that kind of central western part of South Dakota, northern part as well. And so Banner Associates has worked with the organizations that were developed to implement, finalize those plans, work on the development of those projects and that sort of thing, and has been the engineer of record on those projects over many years. And so there's a lot of experience in working with large water development projects.
Any more questions, Bob?
You had explained that you had work that you did on the reservations and other areas. Could you give us a little overview on those types of projects?
Oh, yes. Over the last several years, too, we've done a lot of work with tribal Native American tribes and some of their projects. The one with the Mini-Washte, for example, was predominantly with the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe as well. But over the years have helped them with a cleanup of a World War II gunnery range that they had there, many cleanup and environmental projects, and over the years have entered into a memorandum of agreements with different tribes, also in partnership with the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, for increased capacity building for hopefully more tribal engineers throughout the reservations in South Dakota predominantly. But a variety of civil engineering projects is probably the common denominator, to think of it that way.
Ron?
Well, no, it's quite a question, but I think Anna has a really good resume of water distribution projects in South Dakota and elsewhere. I think we learned a lot from our previous study, from the School of Mines Consortium. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I find it really interesting because the nexus for that was whether or not we should pay $800 or $900 to re-up our future use water permit and work into this.
Yeah, yeah,
Something considerably more.
yeah.
In terms of what we learned. We learned that, it's maybe $500 million for a little pipeline or $2 billion for a big pipeline to bring water in to, part of our district and other parts of the state here in the west. We also funded a corollary study that I think it has to be put in juxtaposition with the pipeline study. We have a 10,000 acre feet future use permit, which is the $500 million pipeline. But we also learned when we had another group from School of Mines work on how we could examine better management of the Pactola Deerfield system that we spill, using current operational guidelines, 7,000 acre feet of water every year. So essentially we waste almost all of what we have as far as a future use permit with water we have right in the hills right now. As I understand, the School of Mines work on the Missouri River pipeline is that storage facilities would be needed, at some juncture in, let's say, eastern Pennington, across across the river into our jurisdiction, maybe similar to what was proposed years ago with the Brennan Reservoir or other kinds of storage facilities. And so I'm struggling to see why we need to be moving forward right now on a pipeline study when we've got a lot of water that we're essentially not managing very well right now in the Deerfield Pactola system. For those of you that remember the presentation, or multiple presentations from the candidate, the master's candidate, as well as Dr. Waterman, you visualize the 5-gallon bucket, and just Pactola alone, we're only managing an inch of that water. It goes up and down from the guide curve, 2 feet up and 2 feet down. So there's a significant volume of water in Pactola that we're not really managing very well. The work we had the School of Mines Consortium do suggested that it might be 100 years under projected population scenarios and historical record before we need water from the river. They ran their projections out 200 years to really make it work. So I'm just wondering if we're a little bit ahead of the game, even if there is a 20-year lead up to some kind of a project. Maybe we need to figure out how to do a better job managing what we have here in the hills, and maybe look again at that Brennan Reservoir so we don't waste 7,000 acre feet of water every year from our existing water supplies. So I really appreciate your company's background on delivering water via pipelines, but I'm just wondering a little bit about whether we're ahead of the game on this particular one with all the water resources we have in the hills. We're not doing a very good job with right now.
Nathan?
I'd like to respond to that. I would agree with you that we need to look at that. The concern that I have about the study that Dr. Waterman had was that there were assumptions built into that, you know, that we have these cyclical weather patterns, and so, you know, basically what they were looking at is allowing those reservoirs to drop down over the course of the winter, utilize that water, and allow them to recharge during what we would assume to be spring snow melt and so forth. And so we're getting the benefit of using water, but also having surge capacity in the system, which is what they were built for. The concern that I have is, what if you have a series of drought years? Now what? That breaks the study. That's, I think, where we would need to have something like what we're potentially talking about here, especially going forward, is having basically redundancy in the system. That's the way that I look at it.
I don't want to, get into back and forth. I just think we have to do a much better job of looking at what we have here for a lot less money than $500 million or $2 billion. We might need the water 100 years from now.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, what we looked at in the study was one option, basically, and that was piping it directly from the river to here. There might be other options. What the School of Mines was tasked with was kind of a limited scope thing. There might be significant other options that would be a lot less expensive and might have greater numbers of partners involved. We don't know. Dr. Chapman just mentioned a project that went up to Eagle Butte. Who knows what else there might be floating around out there. I think it's when you get out and start talking to people and start putting pieces together when things potentially start to gel. It certainly wouldn't hurt to have more water than what you need available going into the future.
I don't disagree with that at all. But to go back on some of the things that you counseled us on in the past is that we need to be careful about who our constituents are here in West Dakota. So maybe this is a bigger deal than West Dakota would be putting forward. It might be something that we would team up with other water development districts that are in the West, or municipalities that might want to get engaged. But I guess I might have a hard time telling my constituents in District 1 when they know what happens to Dakota Deerfield, how much water we waste there, that we're looking at helping, trying to deliver water from the river. So I guess I'm a little worried about that.
I don't see how that would be a problem, because all you're telling them is that you're looking at a redundancy option.
True, but we're looking at it for western South Dakota versus a direct benefit within the district that I've got, where Dakota is the real obvious things that are there. We know that don't do much. We don't do just a very good keep it up, keep it down, and that's all it is. It's one coast, really big benefit in this water.
Tom?
So my question comes to, because it's Corona and all that fun jazz, and I'm reading your proposal. First, you're going to scan the conversations, then you're going to do a stakeholders report, then you're going to do stakeholder meeting. And I bet if you said we're bringing in water from the Missouri over, I bet there's going to be a lot of people wanting the water. I agree with that point, studying the Missouri River and the history of the dam. But my question becomes is the funding. And I know I'm getting the cart before the horse, because this is just trying to build the agency to, start working that, kind of like how Lewis and Clark, they're not putting the pipe in the ground. But what happens if you do have these stakeholder meetings and they're like, yeah, this is a great idea, we really want to be in there, but we don't have any funding, or we don't want to go to the congressional representation and ask for funding for this project. Does this die, or does this become an organization that just kind of bides its time and waits to kind of your organizational charter? How do you see that playing out, especially with we're spending money left and right?
Yes.
As a nation.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can answer all your questions, but I really see this as being a catalyst for the discussions, to find out where the interest is. I mean, we all agree that we should conserve water wherever possible, but you and the city have a very valuable water right. In my mind, it's very, very valuable. There's books about, water is the next oil, or, that sort of thing. And so what does it mean to exercise that water right, and what does that look like? I believe that those who are interested in thinking about it, if there is a financial reality that says, gosh, we're not going to move ahead on it, but let's begin to lay the groundwork. It may stretch out the timing of these things because we are in a different place today than we were the last time we met. Exactly. And so, but I'm confident that when people who are dedicated to those ideas come together, that they will develop a really good plan on how to proceed. So, yeah, thank you, Tom.
Ken?
I'm not sure who's the right person to answer this, so I'll just throw it out for whoever might want to field it. But do I recall correctly, several months ago, was there a meeting out at Bob Selder kind of on a generally related subject matter? And, to what extent does that kind of play in as far as this discussion?
I can
Well,
respond to that.
yeah.
There was a meeting. I was the director that was at the meeting. There were many entities that were there, Rapid City, County, Ellsworth Air Force Base, Lyman Jones Water System, Bob Selder. I think there was another community or two that was represented there. The information was received well. I asked the question at the end if the parties that were there felt as if this was a project that was worth pursuing, and I made sure that everybody had a chance to answer, and every one of them, without exception, said yes. So, now where a potential project would go when you actually start, talking turkey with having to pony up funds, to potentially become part of a new consortium or whatever. I don't know. I don't know at that point if the yes is still a yes. But at least at that point, they received it well. There were several comments that they believed that this was something that they would really like to do. Lyman Jones is actually listed can't just go out there and say, we're gonna do this project. You know, a project like this, like Director Koth suggested, would be huge. Yeah, it would be. There'd probably be a big price tag associated with it. You know, I don't know, depending on what options might be out there, but there would have to be partners involved in it. But again, from my perspective, I think that this type of project is exactly why this board exists. It's why we're called what we're called, Water Development District. So, but I think this is what we're about. I think we should be looking at it at least. And if it comes back, you know, if Cheryl's study comes back and says, you know what, there are people out there, but they're all kind of lukewarm, not quite sure, you know, if this is something, you know, that would actually go, then that's the way it is. Maybe, you know, 10 years down the road, they'd all be ready because maybe at that point, you know, water supplies are starting to dry up and populations are increasing and the pressures might be there, you know, who knows?
Wendy?
Yeah, I just have a question for Nathan. When was that meeting? Has it been?
Early December?
Yeah, it was like December.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was-
Sounds
yeah.
good.
Do they meet on a regular basis, or?
That was basically what we did was who's our professor at the School of Mines at
It was right after that report was presented here, I think, wasn't it? And then,
he was just wrapping up the final version of the report.
Katzenstein?
Katzenstein.
Yeah.
Dr. Katzenstein was just wrapping up the final version of the report. This was a good opportunity for him to make that presentation before the final version got published. And I thought, you know, this might be a great opportunity to get some people together, some potential stakeholders, and hear it. So that's what we did. And even though the weather was crappy, we still had a good turnout. So
Any other questions? Jason?
So I apologize, I know I've asked this before, but your guys' water rate has to come from the Missouri River, right?
Yes.
So the water in Pactola is, you know, even though that we're wasting that water, and I agree with you, we need to manage that better, but you guys can't pull your water rate off of Pactola's use, or can you still pull it off of Pactola? Like it has to come from the Missouri?
Yes, it has to come from Missouri.
The future use water right is actually from the river. There's a whole laundry list of water rights for future use, potential uses out of the river. We have one of them. I don't remember when it was first exercised, but it cost us $900 every 5 years.
700 and something every 7 years. We just renewed it a year and a half ago. So one of the I was in favor of us looking at this because I think the West Dakota needs to show an effort that we have an interest in keeping that and a reason for keeping that water right. You know, someday if we don't use it, somebody may say, well, you haven't used it in 100 years. Somebody else, let's do something about it. You know, I don't know. I'm not going to be around here, but one of the things on these rural water systems, and we've asked the question when you were here before, is that there isn't any of the water development districts that actually own a water system that I know of. They were groups that were put together and formed an organization like Lewis and Clark, and they actually, I don't know if you told me that, but somebody said that they actually have their own water right for the Missouri River.
yeah.
But, you know, there's several rural water systems in South Dakota. Webb's a big one, and that's not owned by a water development district. It's owned by a consortium with a board of directors and several counties involved, 3 counties involved. And I'm not sure about the one in Eagle Butte, who actually owns it.
Yeah, there's three, it's.
Three counties?
It's a new water group, yeah.
It's a
that
new
owns
water
it,
group.
Yeah.
But they're, it's the users that form this
Together.
group.
Right.
And that's probably the only, I mean, we don't have any resources to be funding a
No.
half a million dollar project.
It's really bringing the parties together to define that common purpose that makes it work, you know. And you probably know Syed Hutt from Rosebud Sioux Tribe.
I do.
He's been their water director for years and very instrumental in the Minnewachuny water pipeline as well. And I remember him telling me some time back now that the tribes had wanted water for many years, but could never quite get it done. But when they joined together with other groups, other interests in that area, then that's what made it happen. And so, yeah, it's finding that right combination of interested parties to make those kind of projects work. So.
Go ahead.
I have watched for many years the development of the Minnewachuny. Syed's certainly been a champion. I've been a very close friend and colleague with Syed. Many times he's been to D.C. to lobby the efforts. When this project was funded in many different ways, but to my knowledge, it's probably the largest rural water system, world water project in the U.S. The majority of the funding probably was, congressional. Is my perception. I seem to recall anecdotally that was it a group in Murdo that had some interest in water? It seemed like perhaps a hacking plant or something like that. But I presume, and that was part of the arrangements for arranging the meeting in December, I think. But I guess I would presume that what had happened was, they failed to sign up enough water for the city of Myrtle. I mean, most of these systems you sign up ahead of time, and they size the system accordingly, and then invariably there's people say, well, gosh, I wish we would have got more, but you can only afford to build what you can sign up. The Minnewachuny essentially covers everything from the Cheyenne River, south of the Cheyenne River, coming out west to, in essence, Wall, and of course it goes south from the diversion point, takes in users on the lower Brule reservation. Obviously the Rosebud Reservation has been a big participant, and they and the Ogallala Sioux also supplement the water with groundwater along the way. But basically it comes out to Wall, so that system covers everything south of the Cheyenne River to Wall, and essentially south from there, to the Pine Ridge Reservation, and it goes basically no farther west than there. So, from my standpoint, there's bound to be a limited number of potential users that, if there was another pipeline, it would say, well, this time around, we'll sign up. But as far into the future as we are on the need out here, having to cross that distance to get here, obviously, it's my perception there's Box Elder could use a lot more water. Is that correct, Nathan, or is Box Elder adequate?
It's not just Box Elder.
But yeah, I'm aware there's plenty of other areas of need from here to Wasta, basically to the Cheyenne River where our jurisdiction ends. But the population base there, to bring a pipeline to Wasta to serve the area west of Wasta, the estimates of when the demand curve gets us to the point where this becomes feasible, having had a meeting out at Box Elder, well, yeah, everyone says this is interested, but there's no statements from anybody saying, well, this matters enough to me to be here at this meeting. You know, I don't, from what I've heard tonight, this is not a proposal that I can support. I'm sorry. That's my position.
Well, I guess I was thinking that I would support this proposal as long as we're going to have this water right and we've done the preliminary study. We do need to know what the interest is and who's interested. To me, it would not be a pipeline just to bring out water to western Pennington County. If you're going to have that kind of an investment, you need everybody along the way, and we need to find out who those people are now. And from my background in drinking water and rural water systems, if you build it, they will come wanting. And yes, the population is sparser than it is in eastern South Dakota, but I think there is still demand. Box Elder would be one, Rapid City, and as Rapid City grows, Ellsworth Air Force Base. I think we do need to find out who is interested and go from there.
I was just going to respond quickly that the line coming westerly, the mini Wachoni system line, I believe does come to a wall. The pipeline size is necked down as it comes west, so it's not that big by the time it gets to wall. Apparently it doesn't carry enough volume to cover some of those communities along the way. That meeting was partially driven by the gentleman, I can't remember his name, but
John Zyko.
yeah, and I spoke with him. He was shopping for an area to build a meat packing plant, and there wasn't one community that was able to accommodate the flows that he needed. So that was part of what this was about. So I guess it got me thinking that, you know, hey, there'd probably be other people along the way. As far as, you know, West Dakota just being about everything west of Wasta, I would agree with Director Harris's comment that, you know, there's nothing saying, I don't think, in that future use permit that if there was a pipeline constructed and it did go along that particular path, that the water couldn't be sold to communities along the pipeline path. And the other thing to consider is that it's not just the West Dakota future use permit that we're talking about here potentially. Rapid City has a much larger future use permit. And again, Lyman Jones also. So I think there are some natural partners that are already there for this. So.
I guess I would concur with Director Jovic in that there are some natural partners, and if this proposal was to go forward, those people should also be here at the table to support this versus just West Dakota Water Development District. Perhaps the city of Box Elder, where Director Jovic has indicated early on he maybe shouldn't be advocating on this project, that seems kind of conflict of interest, would be a partner. Maybe Lyman Jones, maybe the tribes who have been forced to use more groundwater than they really want to. It's more costly than what they're being delivered through West River. Lyman Jones and Wachoni as a part of that deal would be a partner. But I don't think West Dakota is the right entity to put this proposal in play as a single entity. So I won't be supporting the proposal.
Bob?
One of the things that we asked Dr. Chapman to come talk about, and this proposal was part of it, is to help identify those things so that we can actually go without, positive. So we can identify the partnerships that are of interest and thereby show that we are actually making progress or possibly using Missouri River. And by using the expertise that she's built up and her company has built up over the last 30 years, they would be an excellent partner to try and help identify the partners that we might have. We have experience in that, and that's really what the proposal is about, is actually going out and making sure that there's a contact. And just occasionally, because right now it's just anecdotal that we know this work. We haven't gone out actually physically and pulled that data together. That was sort of the thought I had making this kind of proposal. I understand your concerns.
It's a little bit of a chicken and an egg thing,
Yeah,
a little bit.
I can see that.
And so, you know, because I too have a lot of anecdotal of people I think, or communities I think have an interest, but, you know, until you actually go out and pull that, so to speak, and
One thing, we're just the board, we have one staff member.
right.
And so we have to use people with expertise like Banner Associates and School of Mines and so forth on these projects. We don't, we're volunteers, and so, go ahead.
I would like to call the question. I
Oh.
think we've all made our points clear on this, Mr. Chair, so
Okay.
I think we should call the question for a vote.
Any objections to calling the question? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Roll call.
So this is the call to
Yeah,
question.
this is just the call to
Okay.
vote.
So this is not to vote on this.
Yes.
This is to call the question. We need a 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
Koth,
Call the question, aye.
Bjorky,
Aye.
Driscoll,
Mine was no.
Jovic, Nodigal, Williams,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Harris.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, very good. So
Now it's the vote.
now it's the vote, yeah. So all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Roll call, please.
Okay, this is the motion to
Yes.
approve the funding.
Correct.
Harris,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Nodigal. Sorry if I said it wrong. Jovic, Driscoll,
No.
Bjorky,
Aye.
Koth. Motion carries, 5 ayes.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if there are any board members who would be interested in working as we are developing and talking with people in between meetings, I would certainly welcome that. And
Okay.
leave it to you, so.
So you're planning on, when are you actually planning on starting then?
We would start soon, like
Right-
right away.
like right away, okay.
Yeah. So.
Is
if
there any
there-
volunteers? There's two. Is two enough?
Okay. And of course.
3?
Thank you. All right. thank
Okay,
you.
there you got your
All right.
volunteers. And
Thank you.
Wendy too. Wendy wants to be on it. So great, you got 3. More the merrier. Okay, thank you for coming. Now, that was number 11. Number 12, policy 26, hours of business amendment by Tom.
So item number 12 is the policy amendment based on the request from admin not to require office hours on state holidays. We need a 2/3 vote. There was the original, and I can read it if you guys want me to, but I believe everyone can read. and then the revision. And so we would vote on the revision. Does anybody want me to read the revision out loud?
I guess not.
Okay. So that would be what the vote is on. And I move to approve the suggested revision version of policy 26 for the business hours and staff requirement to staff during those hours.
Very good. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Bob. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 13, status of stakeholder listening roundtable session. Driscoll.
Times have changed since we voted to have our stakeholder meeting. I think it's kind of obvious that could be reconsidered. I'll move that we cancel it indefinitely.
Is there a second to the motion? Second. Seconded by Tom. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, item 14, authorization for treasurer and administrator to invest money in a CD at Black Hills Community Bank. Williams.
I'd like to make a motion that we consider and then provide a year CD for $200,000. That number can be modified with a vote of yes.
Was that a motion?
A motion.
Okay, a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Tom. Discussion on the motion. What was the interest rate we're going to get again?
For the 12 month, that would be 0.55%. For a 2 year, it's 0.75. Currently, the interest in our savings account is 0.1 something, about 1/5 of what we would get on a CD.
Okay, so what would be in your motion, then what would be the term?
For 1 year.
For 1 year. Oh, okay, sorry. Is everybody under, Nathan?
I'm just wondering about the amount. Do we want to go more or less? Where did the 200K come from?
That'd be about, well, you said we were going to have 600,000, it'd be about a third of our money.
It was kind of arbitrary, but just looking at what we anticipate having, it's about a third, maybe a little more than a third. I will add that you have to leave it, if you pull it out before 180 days, which isn't very long, you have to pay the interest. You could lose some of the principal. After 180 days, you just lose interest. So considering what we're getting on the savings, I don't really see much of a downside in this.
Any other questions?
There's some discussion that interest rates can drop even further.
Well, I asked the banker what he anticipated. He said he doesn't see anything but a decline in interest rates for the next year or so.
Okay.
If we would have done this a year ago, we'd have like 4 times the interest rate, I think. But it's never too late to do the right thing.
That's true. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, that's 14, 15. Chair's comment, I have one thing. I was contacted by the engineer, Ron Bangs, with Green Valley Sanitary District about a week ago, just to give us an update on how they're coming on their funding package for their wastewater project out there at Green Valley. They were in front of the South Dakota Water Management, or not the Water Management, the Water and Wastewater Board, and they were given awarded a grant in the amount of $2,370,000 And remember, their total project cost is approximately 9.7, the engineer's estimate. They are working with rural development on a funding package for, hopefully for all of the remainder amount. It would be a loan grant type of funding from rural development. He wasn't sure what the dollar amount was going to be, just depending on some of the factors that they had in their application. So right now, he said, I don't know for sure if we'll be coming back to West Dakota for some help on the funding or not. But that's just an update of where they are. So that's all I have. Items from directors. Dan?
Mr. Mullally, did we have an email from John Carrera there with Game and Fish as far as a quick little status update on Canyon Lake dredging that was intended to be read at our meeting?
We did get an email. I
think we neglected to put it on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, yeah.
Do you have anything at your fingertips that you could provide? It was pretty short and sweet, and I don't recall the gist.
Is your question in regards to USGS sampling?
No, it was, John had actually provided a short update via email so that he wouldn't have to attend our meeting.
Maybe Chairman, do you remember?
I don't remember exactly what it was.
I had forwarded that to you, or John had sent it to you. So.
Yeah, I don't think I saw that.
No, you wouldn't have.
No, I didn't.
I had just talked to John about it, and I said, hey, we're not sure if we're going to have a virtual meeting or what.
Yeah, Dan and I talked about that, but I never did really see the email.
Okay, shall I read this to you?
Sure.
Since you probably can't read that. Plans were originally made, this is from John Carrero, Canyon Lake dredging update. Plans were originally made to start dredging in mid to late March. Around March 13th, state offices were closed and were directed to work from home. Essentially, all activities that involved multiple staff members were put on hold. Completing this project is a priority for our West River fisheries staff. We have been trying to get approval to resume the project as soon as possible, and hopefully we will be in the near future. I will keep you updated on the start date, and please let me know if you need more information. Thank you, John Carrero.
Okay, thank you.
All I got.
Bob? Go ahead, Bob.
There's another email I'd like you to let us know about, and that is from Matthew Dawes, the attorney.
Okay.
From, I guess it's today, last week. It was in reference to the conflict of interest.
Yeah, I know exactly which one you want. I'm a popular guy here.
When we discussed this last time, we forgot to put a date on when we'd like that to be done. I was wondering if there's a way that we could.
I do have the email here. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
So this is my email to Matt Nas, who is our attorney. Hi, Matt. At our March meeting, the board approved a motion to have you look at our proposed conflict of interest article and the proposed amendment. As you probably know, this discussion has been going on for a while. The meeting minutes and packets from the January and March meetings may be of use. And then I cited last meeting's substitute motion by Max, seconded by Bialotta, to send the proposed amendment for Article 5 of the bylaws to the West Dakota Water Development District Attorney for comments. I copied the original and amended versions below, so I gave him the two versions, and he responded back. Thank you, Dan. I will take a look. I'll also review the minutes and packets from January and March. is there a timeline by which the board would like this completed? And I responded to this and just told them our next meeting is, that would probably make sense, would be July, but I didn't give them any directive on that. So that's Director Williams' question, I think.
Is, should we direct July?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you'll also note there was no limitation on money he could spend either, so just pointing that out.
Any other items from directors? Any items from the administrator?
Let me add some notes here. So regarding the Canyon Lake dredging, I talked to Galen, and due to the delays in the dredging, as you know, we have a contract with USGS for, I think, $18,000. Just had it here, but it was supposed to go from October to June. Obviously, and he hasn't done anything. We haven't gotten any bills, so that will have to be reconsidered. I told him probably at our July meeting, so
okay.
Be coming up. July will also be our budget meeting, not the approval meeting, but to get a preliminary budget. So I will send out a template of basically what we did last year. It was really quite simple last year. We just took the levy amount and said, because we really didn't have anything, we said we're going to spend this much on, I don't know the words we used, but non-specific projects. Anyway, we will get, I suspect I'll get a levy request pretty soon. And usually the end of May, we get a big chunk of money. Not that this really affects anything we do, but we probably get about $85,000 in a week or so here from the county, from the levy. And another thing, I got an email from Weaver Adams. I don't really know him. He's Rapid City, and he wants, I guess, and there are probably people that know a lot more about this than I do, but Rapid City and the county are working on GIS maps or something, and they want to fold into that the water development district areas. I don't know where these maps come from now for water development district, but I understand in 2020 these boundaries may be changing, so I'm going to keep tracking this and see where it goes. That's all I have.
Okay. Items from public. Skylar? Okay, you waited a long time.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I'm Skylar Borglum. I believe I've gone around and introduced myself to several of you and handed out my little cards. I am so grateful for the time that I get to have with you. This is something that I value in the way that our democracy works, where everyday people put in so much time and effort, like all of you have this evening. 3 hours is not a short meeting, and every one of you has been remarkable this evening. I've been answering messages, and I've been dealing with things in my own campaign, certainly, and every one of you here has just done such a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of Pennington County and on behalf of South Dakota. I've had the privilege of attending city council meetings, working with county commissioners. I'm currently a state representative for District 32, which I don't think this area is in. I think this is just outside of mine. But one of the privileges I've had as an engineer and as a businesswoman is I get to both serve people and problem solve. And that's what I want to go to Washington, D.C. to do, to make use of both of those backgrounds that I have. We have a number of issues right now in our food security program, or in our food security as a nation. I won't get into those tonight. It's been a very long night for all of you. I don't want to do a data dump on you, but I will tell you that I make my decisions overwhelmingly based on the numbers. And when I look around and I see how much of our agricultural land is being bought up by foreign countries, our food processing plants that are being bought by foreign countries and foreign companies, and the inability of our hog farmers and our cattle ranchers to actually get their produce to market when we're importing meat. This is a major problem. So I would love to visit with all of you more about this, and I'm happy to, but I also know this has been a doozy of a meeting, and I'm sensitive to that. So I'll hang out for a bit if anyone has any other questions. And again, I've really appreciated my time here with you this evening. Thank you.
No, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Well, that's, your motion to adjourn. Bob? Tom? Bob? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody, for coming. That's pretty typical.
Well, anybody who's still on the right side of the sod with all this death and destruction has to be fine, right?
Now we got to clean up, don't we?